Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Clean Tech Pod. Today, we'll be talking about organizations and how organizations are built. We have with us today the board chairman of Clean Technology Hub in person of Mr. Oladipupo Baruwa, who is bringing wealth of experience in administration, in governance, and forming organizations and how they function. I'll open the floor for him to introduce himself and we take it from there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ibrahim. It's actually a pleasure to be here. And thank you, viewers. My name, as has been said, is Oladipupo Baruwa. I'm opportune to be the chairman of the organization that you are listening to his podcast. And I'm so happy to be here and delighted to share some of my insights about organizational building and the culture within building an inclusive and sustainable organization. Hope that our insights will be instructive to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, sir. As you have clearly mentioned, we are talking about organizations, how they run, how they operate. But before they are able to do that, certain things have to go into play, certain things have to be built properly firsthand. Things around core values, things around institutionalization of those values, which of course we know more like communication, more like ethics, and all that. We hope that the insights we get from you today will help others out there, help build environments of organization that are healthy and forward-looking. So we just want to know, sir, over the years and the experience you have gained in both public service and in private life, what would you share with us as the key things to put in focus if organizations are supposed to thrive the way they are meant to be?
Thank you very much, Mr. Ibrahim, and that's actually a very good starting point, like you said. Starting up an organization, it's not all about the building. It's about both the physical and the non-physical infrastructures that you have on ground. And the basic things that actually form an organization is actually the non-physical infrastructure. What are your ethical values? What core ethics is the organization built on? What can be said about the organization's non-physical infrastructural backbones? And those are the key things that an entrepreneur needs to have at the back of his mind before actually setting up to set an organization. And what are we talking about? We're talking about what are the strategies for communication? What are the strategies for building team, the team that is about to bring on board? What are the strategies that he intends to use to engage with his stakeholders? How does he want his stakeholders, his clients, the staff, his board, his management team? How does he want them to represent and to present the organization that he is about to set? Those things must be put into focus, must be well established, must be well enumerated before he even starts bringing together the physical infrastructure that he intends to put in. And it will be very, very instructive going forward to handle one or two of those nitty ethical issues and see how entrepreneurs should actually have this in place and how this actually form the fabric of an inclusive and sustainable organization.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. That is quite deep. And of course, it's opening more avenues as we're sitting here to think of other angles that we can, help with sharing your experience with others. Now, you talked about building organizations on certain pivotal pillars.
Absolutely.
You've talked about communication, you talked about core ethical values, where, those who will be the actors in such an organization will have to abide by. And maybe this leads me to an angle which is a priority area in our daily lives today, to say oftentimes people say that trust is the bedrock of living today.
Yeah.
How are we able to incorporate trust and trust building in the general framework of building an organization? I don't know if you can share those insights with us.
You've actually mentioned a very pivotal factor in any organization. And to be honest with you, an organization bereft of trust is actually a dead organization. Because if people cannot hold the organization for what it stands for, that organization need not exist. And building trust starts from within, from the personalities that represent the organization to the image of that organization outside. What are the colors of that organization? Does those colors present trust? Do they actually communicate love? Because trust without love is nothing. So let's talk about trust. Let's focus principally about trust. How do you cultivate trust within an organization? Trust is all about communication. How does your organization communicate within and without? The staff, how do they exchange information between themselves? How does the organization pass out information? How does it communicate to his clients, to his stakeholders, his management team, his board members? How does that organization communicate information that is vital? How frequent are those information communicated? How trustworthy are the data being shared? And this all tells about the image of that organization. So, for instance, let's take CTH, and I'm very proud of CTH in the sense that we are built on trust. The communication between the staff, between the management and the board, between the board and the organization itself is so seamless. And each one of us takes our mandate very seriously. And we are so particular about it to the extent that you don't need to be prompt before you share what is expected of you. That is all about trust. And as a board member, I am so confident about the information my management team is giving unto me. I don't need, even though I have the oversight function, I hardly do it because I am so confident that the information being given to me are verifiable and they are authentic. That is all about trust. So if I am so confident about that, I could actually go to bed and say that the information being given to me is germane, is verifiable, and it goes around like that. Even between the management team, how often do they communicate? Are they friends? Are they actually having relationship outside the office? Do they know each other to the extent of being able to say, this is my friend, that is my colleague? Or are they just working together to earn a daily living? Working in an organization to build trust goes beyond you just merely being colleagues. It goes to you being friends. And the more friendly the environment is, the more easier is it for people to communicate, the easier it is for you to trust one another, the easier it is for you to have the back of yourselves, the easier it is for you to represent the organization transparently. Trust is all about transparency. It's all about transparency. How transparent am I on my task? How confident am I? What effort have I taken in, have I put in to ensure that the information I'm about to release from my table carries the authentic facts and figure? That is about trust building. When I'm talking to my superior, what information am I giving onto him? Am I telling him information he wants to hear or information he needs to hear? Okay. You understand? Okay. When I'm communicating with the client, am I telling the client what they need to know or what I want them to know?
Okay.
So if the organization is telling its clients what he wants them to know, is that information trustworthy? Or is that organization telling the client what they need to know about that product? If you are to tell the client or if you are to tell your customer what they need to know about that product, you're actually telling them the facts and figures about that product, and it goes back to the image of that company.
Wow. This has been quite insightful from the prints of experiences I'm sure you've lived. So it now goes to tell that an organization which has maybe formed core values or has formed a vision and a mission.
Absolutely.
So if a mission and a vision, both statements or those values are not tied to trust, means they are meaningless.
Ibrahim, you always know me that I start my conversation from the vision of the organization.
Exactly.
If you have a vision that is bereft of trust, that people cannot trust, that your team cannot trust, the organization is dead. The organization is not going anywhere because nobody will work in an organization that they cannot depend on. If an organization tells you, this is my vision in the next 5-10 years, and there is no strategic action driving towards those vision, driving towards those goals, driving towards those objectives, the workers are just coming to hand pay. Their careers are not being progressive. The organization is not being progressive. At the end of the day, one of them is going to drop dead. It's just a matter of time.
Exactly.
So building trust goes beyond you just writing letter words or coming up with a cliche statement as your vision or as your mission. It goes to you being strategic about how you want to achieve that statement that you have made and working towards achieving it and bringing everybody together into achieving that specific goals and objectives. So when you have your vision, you work towards it, you come up with a strategy and ensure that your team imbibes it and they are the driver of that goal. And before you know it, it becomes a rolling stone. You just continue to gather, and by the time you are getting to your end point, you'll be amazed about the effort you have put in and the output that you have derived.
Wow. Thank you very much, sir, for sharing this insight. So it just goes to tell that without trust, nothing concrete can be built.
Absolutely. Nothing concrete can be done. Even in our everyday life, we all strive on trust. I'm seated with you now. I'm trusting that you will not eat me. It's all about trust.
Exactly.
It's all about trust.
Exactly.
As I'm seated next to you, you are trusting that as I'm speaking, I'm telling you something you can hold on to.
Yes.
Something that will edify, that will build you. Exactly. You are trusting me to truly tell you the truthful insight that as I've known it to be.
Exactly.
Life is about trust. The same thing goes into the organization. When people approach your organization for a service, for a product, it's because they trust that organization. And if there is no trust within the organization cannot bring out any truthful product or service.
Exactly.
It cannot bring out any product or service that the client or the customer can depend on.
Exactly.
And if there are no clients, there are no customers,
there is no organization.
There is no organization.
So everything is in one big loop, and once this first end is found wanting, nothing concrete can be built.
Like I said, when an entrepreneur is setting out to establish an organization, either be for profit or non-profit, he needs to have at the back of his mind or at the back of her mind, what are my core values? What do I want people to know my organization for? The moment he's able to set that in place, he should, as a matter of fact, build trust into it and ensure that people can depend on him. That is trust.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Not to take much of your time, we just want to know if there is a lived case study or scenario why over the course of your experiences where trust had either made something happen meaningfully or marred the process for the negative.
Let's even look at the issue around the world nowadays. We talk about climate change. Our organization is built around climate change. When the issue about climate change started, nobody trusted it.
Yeah.
Nobody believed in it.
Yeah.
Everybody took it to be one of those political things. Isn't it?
Yes.
But now, what are we seeing? We're all seeing the realities.
Yes.
We're all seeing change in temperature. We are seeing change in rain patterns. We are seeing changes all around us. And people are beginning to trust that truly there is a climate change. And the perception is now informing what? Reaction. And reaction is informing investment. And investment is informing change in mannerism, change in standard of living, in the way people live.
Yeah.
That is all about trust, because they now believe that truly there is a climate change happening.
Yes.
And because of that, if I don't do this, I will end up having this, I will end up having this.
Yeah.
We could be adverse to my living.
Exactly.
And people are now cultivating a new way of living into conforming with the dramatic changes that are taking place in our environment. It's all about trust.
Yeah.
Take for instance, when everybody also were talking about, let's go into the health sector. When the issue about HIV started, nobody believed it. Nobody trusted there was anything like HIV.
Yeah.
Nobody believed it. We were all living our life as it were.
Yes.
But when it dawned on us, way of life has changed. You now see people doing what? Becoming much more careful about their sexual relationship.
Yes.
You're seeing people now going to the hospital, taking more frequent intermittent tests to check their HIV status. Trust is now being built into those tests.
Yes.
Because initially, you will recall, when those tests were done, there were false claims.
Exactly.
But now, there are now trust being built into the system, because the system has been refined. The test kits have been refined. The test kits have now been made to be readily available, and the ready to use test kits have been properly done now that people can depend and trust the results.
Exactly. Wow.
It's all about incremental improvement. And that is what trust is all about. Incremental believing, incremental communication. When those faults about the HIV test kits initially came forth, what happened? People ran back. But the producers came out and said, this was our fault. This was the mistake here. And they went back into the laboratory and built on it, corrected it. And the trust started building back into it. And as people use those test kits, and they are finding out that the trust is getting back into the system. That is all about incremental improvement, incremental communication, incremental engagement. If you don't engage in something, you don't get to trust that system.
Exactly.
So, if an organization that is producing a product does not communicate, does not engage, does not interact with its clients, it can't build trust. Within an organization, if the management does not engage with its staff, does not communicate with its staff, it can't build trust. If an organization does not communicate step-by-step incremental actions being taken towards achieving the vision and the mission, staff will lose focus.
Yes.
And they will lose trust about the organization.
Wow. This is very enlightening so far. We hope that we can keep you here for longer to tap into your wealth of experience. But sadly, time is maybe our biggest enemy to have that happen. It is incredibly interesting how you have tied everything from one end of the loop to the other, and seeing that none of these values you've talked about, the ethics, the communication, and the trust itself, and several others, that they cannot exist as islands, and that they are all interconnected. So, owing to that, we may just want to hear what will be your advice for people out there as to how to build a homogeneous system that allows the full function of an organization.
I will tell you, Ibrahim, it's a very hard task for entrepreneurs. It's a very hard task for management to actually build what you spoke about, an homogeneous organization. Can you actually get an homogeneous system? It's an huge task to do, but you can always strive towards ensuring there's a balance within the system. And having that balance is all about communication, it's about engagement. So I would tell anybody, I would tell management team, I would tell a CEO, an aspiring CEO, an aspiring entrepreneur, that when you're setting up your organization, have it at the back of your mind, there are two basic infrastructures you need to have: the physical infrastructure and the non-physical infrastructure. Your non-physical infrastructure is built on your ability and consistent engagement to communicate what your organization is all about, both within and outside the organization, and be consistent in what you communicate. Tell your clients, tell your customer what they need to know, what your product is about, what your service is about, what your organization is about, and work towards ensuring that that is what you bring out of your organization. That is what your product represents. That's what your organization represents. That is what your staff primarily bring forth into the public. Thank you.
So with that very free information that you've shared with us, of course, at a level now, people would have hugely paid for this years of experience, advice that you've just shared. Thank you for sharing that insight with us, and we're grateful to have you. We're always pleased to have you. And to our guest, thank you for listening. We always hope to have your listening ears with us. It has been an engaging and very informative session with our board chairman here. From us, it's a very good thank you, and see you next time.
Thank you very much.